But rock, be gone. Hey there, vinyl community. I'm here today to do my little part and help blaspheme for the vinyl community and participate in Alan's vinyl tag video. Alan, Static Traveler. You know, there's a lot of vinyl tag videos that go around and a lot of people jump on the train, and most of the time I just don't end up finding time to sit down and make a video, but the ones that Alan does always are pretty interesting. So I think he comes up with interesting questions, and the theme of this one is to, you know, if I were a god, to play vinyl god and let albums and artists and the annals of music history live and die on your every whim. So I'm going to answer some record-related questions and sew some records just because, you know, I thought this video seemed fun, and I think we needed some more light-hearted videos out there in the VC and not the 17th MoFi scandal video. So Alan gave us 9 questions to answer and show some records in response, so that's just what I'm going to do. My first act is God. Show a record you would improve by adding or removing a single track. The record I picked for this is the 1978 album by Tetsuro Yamashita, Go Ahead. So this is, Tetsuro Yamashita is one of the godfathers, if not the godfather, of Japanese city pop, that style of jazzy soul and funk that got popular in the late 70s and early 80s in Japan, and I think does some of the best of it. His 1978 album, Go Ahead, is one of his more interesting, maybe even more experimental albums. It's the album that he took the most chances with. It's also the album that I think the production is a more close-up, intimate, less layered production than many of his other albums. And it's also the album that he was almost, he was a little bit afraid that this would be his last major label album. Of course, the next album he would end up making was Ride on Time, which became a huge best-selling hit and propelled him into stardom in Japan. But he thought this was going to be his swan song. So he took some chances on this album, and for me, it's one of my favorite Yamashita albums. There's so many great tracks on here, and it's so soulful and funky and intimate. I don't think there's many bad tracks on here, and the album has such a great flow, but there's one song on this album that I just think does not fit. And that song is This Could Be the Night, which is a cover of a Harry Nilsson song. And it's not that I think the cover is bad. I don't think the cover is bad. I think it could be a good song. I think what Yamashita does with it is really interesting. However, it just doesn't fit the mood of the album. It's completely out of place with the track listing. It's completely out of place with the flow. It's completely out of place with the musical atmosphere that I think he was building to on this album. You know, we have these sweet, soulful, intimate, serious, kind of funky songs. And then all of a sudden you get this like Beach Boys, Brian Wilson-esque, and this could be and it just doesn't work. It doesn't work with the mood of the album. So I think if I were a god, I would scrap that song from the track listing. I would put it on another album of Yamashita's. It would go fine on Pocket Music. He could put it on one of his many cover compilations he does. I just don't think it fits on this album. Number 2, show a record by an artist you would resurrect from the dead. Now, there's a couple ways you could go with this. I kind of cheated. So what's funny is I picked an album performed by 2 greats who are no longer with us, Jascha Heifetz and Gregor Piatigorsky. However, I am referring to the composers, not the performers on this album. And this is the Heifetz-Piatigorsky concerts on RCA, playing the Mozart Quintet in G minor and the Mendelssohn Octet in E flat major. So Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and Felix Mendelssohn were 2 Mozart was late classical, Mendelssohn was early romantic, but 2 composers that were taken from us, I think, far too young. You know, Mozart was 35 when he passed away, Mendelssohn was 38, so we never got hell, we never even got middle period Mozart or Mendelssohn, let alone late period Mozart or Mendelssohn. These were composers that still had so much to give us. You know, Mozart was entering the compositional prime of his life when he passed away with, you know, compositions like the Requiem, which he never actually finished, and the Magic Flute. And, you know, Mendelssohn, we were having, you know, his symphonies were hitting his stride with, you know, the Third Symphony, the Scottish Symphony, the Italian Symphony, the Reformation. There's so much music and evolution from either composer that we never really got to experience. And if I had godlike powers, I would love to see what these composers could do with the rest of their life. Not just in music, in composition, but also to the field of music, because Mendelssohn, for instance, wasn't just a fantastic composer, he was also, Mendelssohn is the reason why we even probably today know who Johann Sebastian Bach is. Mendelssohn was instrumental in the revival and preservation of Bach's music in his manuscripts, and keeping his music alive for the next generations. You know, Bach's music was almost completely lost to history, and Mendelssohn was a key in reviving the music of the Baroque greats, people that were 100 years before him. So I really think Felix Mendelssohn just does not get enough credit, not only for the wonderful music that he wrote, but for his role in shaping our appreciation of music. I think he also deserves a lot of credit for. So yes, I would resurrect these two great composers. Number 3, which record that you own would you obliterate from the face of the earth, erasing all memory of its existence? Well, I would use my powers to smite this album, a CD. Yeah, I know I'm cheating. Deal with it. This album is the 2002 EP by potentially my favorite band, at least in my top 5 favorite bands of all time, Duran Gray. This is their 2003 EP, Six Ugly. 2002 EP, Six Ugly. And the reason I would obliterate this from existence is because I think this band has one of the most perfect discographies of any musical group. I mean, from their debut album in the late 1990s all the way up through, you know, their last album that was just released this year, I think they just really don't have much in the way of clunkers, especially for their full-length albums. I don't think any of their full-length albums is bad. However, I think by far the weakest link in their discography is this EP, which is just, I know it comes at a time when they were starting to experiment with their sound. They were starting to go from a art rock, hard rock, punky, young, energetic band to a more serious metal band. You know, on follow-up albums after this, like Vulgar and Withering to Death and Marrow of a Bone, they were really starting to explore a darker sound, a more metal-influenced sound, and they would eventually find their way into death metal, extreme metal, things like that. But the problem is they were adopting this metal sound, but just the songwriting is not good. It's not fully fleshed out. All the riffs on this album are just incredibly boring. I don't think the vocals are really any good. Keo really didn't know how to scream yet. But most of the entire album is either, you know, sing-talking or screaming. And it's just none of it is done well, I don't think. I don't think any song on here is memorable or one that I would go out and listen to. By far the best song on the album is the opening track, Mr. Newsman. But the problem with this track is that it's mostly in English, and Keo, the vocalist and lyricist, does not speak English. And so if you are an English speaker and you listen to the lyrics on this song, they are like Google Translate bad. They're really bad. They don't make any sense. It's like toddler English. And so it's just, even the best song on the album, it's hard for me to take it seriously. It's a shame, because I kind of like the cover art, the kind of superhero or supervillain artwork they went with in the back cover there. I think it's cool, and it came with this maybe potentially very obviously copyright infringement logo sticker. But musically, I can't get over this album. So I would smite it from existence. I think the band's discography would be immensely better if this just was gone. Show a record cover which displays something of the power of nature. Well, this definitely had me thumbing through the classical section because that's where a lot of, I think a lot of interesting nature artwork is going to end up. And I was right, because I found this beautiful painting on the cover of my Columbia copy of Mahler's Symphony No. 4 with Otto Klemperer and the Philharmonia Orchestra with the wonderful soprano Elizabeth Schwarzkopf. So this is a UK Columbia SAX recording. And you'll notice the painting on here is a painting by Caspar David Friedrich called Monk by the Sea. This is a painting that was completed in 1810, so about 100 years before Mahler was alive, or before Mahler was composing this music at least. But I think, Mahler's music always has a natural dimension to it. There's a lot of allegory to nature. He always would retreat to the mountains to compose. He was very at home in the wilderness, and I think his music does reflect that love and awe of the power of nature. And the painting they chose for this album cover I think works too. It's a monk staring off into the enormity of the sea, and it's hard to tell from the painting whether that mood captured both via the monk, the character in the painting, and via our own perspective is one of awe and awesomeness, or one of almost of intimidation and fright at the power of the sea, the enormity of the sea, of how expansive and intimidating it can be. So I think these ocean paintings are always like that, because the sea is something, especially in the late 19th century, early 20th century mind, the sea is something to be both revered and intimidated by. So anyway, that's my pick for the power of nature. Number 5. Which 3 musicians would you Frankenstein together to produce a super musician? Well, this could have gone a lot of different ways. So bear with me here, because I'm going to try to cover, I think, every aspect of what I would want in a musician, both as a composer and performer. So for my first third of my Franken musician, I picked the French Baroque master composer François Couperin, who was sometimes known as Couperin the Great, because Couperin came from a very large family of composers and musicians, many of whom were notable in their own right. But François was, of course, the best known by history and his contemporaries, and he was court composer to Louis XIV at the end of Louis XIV's reign/life. And I think, lots of people have this high reverence for Johann Sebastian Bach from the Baroque period, and I think, yes, Bach's reputation is well earned. However, one of the other, I think, leading minds in formal composition at that time, well, actually before that time, because Couperin was a little bit earlier, was, François Couperin. And he composed in a completely different style than Johann Sebastian Bach, because the French Baroque is very stylistically different from the later German Baroque. However, because of that, I think Couperin does not get his just due, and I think he is just as much a genius in Johann Sebastian Bach, and I actually kind of prefer the music of Couperin, maybe because it is so much less played, a little more special, a little more off the beaten track, and I think no less genius. So yes, I picked François Couperin and his compositional and stylistic genius for my Franken musician. Next, to make sure this Franken musician is well-rounded, I did an easy pick. I picked David Bowie because I think if you combine a great musical mind who has formal training and a genius compositional ear, and you combine it with someone like David Bowie, who is a conceptual genius, a stylistic genius, someone that can create worlds, can world build, can character develop, can write fantastic lyrics, can pull something together into a total musical project, I think David Bowie is your guy. And he makes up the second third of my Franken musician. Finally, to make this a well-rounded musician, I chose the lead guitarist and songwriter of a more contemporary band, and that's Thomas Erak, the guitarist and singer for The Fall of Troy. I think Thomas Erak is one of the most innovative, talented, virtuosic guitar players of the last 20 years. I think he's woefully underappreciated, but I mean, the man is a guitar machine. If you ever get a chance, check out some live videos of The Fall of Troy playing. I mean, He can do things with that instrument that I've never heard from any other guitarist, and his playing style is entirely unique in his own. He has his own sound, and I think he's the type of virtuoso player and instrumentalist that my musician would need to be part of him. Number 6, show a record by one male artist and one female artist that you would save from the end of the world to entertain you in heaven forever. Well, since Alan picked a deceased musician when he did this question, I feel okay picking deceased musicians for mine. So for my one male artist, I am going to pick Frank Zappa. I think, I think the combination of incredibly talented musician and composer and someone that is comfortable in a number of different styles, from rock and roll to jazz to classical to avant-garde. I think Frank Zappa makes the widest range of music that I would want to hear for the rest of my life. And a female component to that would be the ever-talented Nina Simone. I know Nina Simone was not a huge composer, but she was a brilliant arranger, a brilliant pianist across a number of different styles, and a incredibly gifted singer. She is another person I think is capable of making impactful music across a wide variety of styles and genres and formats. So I would really love, especially if I could get the two of them to play together. Imagine Nina Simone and Frank Zappa playing together. That would just be out of this world. So those are the two people I would like to entertain me in this hypothetical heaven. Number 7, show a record which depicts one or more of the 7 deadly sins. Well, for this question, I picked there's some easy records I could have picked. Some of the death or black metal albums I have that have either very risque covers or very gory covers or things like that. And I went for something a little more subtle. For my deadly sin, I picked Pride, and I picked the album I Am King by Code Orange. So this is an album that is this band's sophomore album. This band used to be known, prior to this album, as Code Orange Kids, because they were a very young band from, I believe, Pennsylvania, I think. And they released a fantastic debut album called Love Is Love, Return to Dust, which to this day is one of my favorite hardcore, power violence, experimental heavy albums out there. And their follow-up to that, they rebranded, they're adults now, and they wanted to show the world who's boss, and so they came out with this album called I Am King, and it's just kind of the most in-your-face name and cover art, I Am King scrawled in this guy's forehead here, that you could possibly think. And even the back cover, you see the shot of the band, and it's just very, they're shooting it to look as intimidating and powerful as possible. And in many ways, this album is a show of bravado, a show of pride in the power this band is able to exude when they play. And I don't think this album is quite as musically rewarding as the first album, Love Is Love, Return to Dust. I think this album is very good, but I think they're trying a little too hard to be hardcore. They're trying a little too hard to be edgy and to be to show bravado and to show this cavalier attitude, and their songwriting got a little simplified because of that, and they moved in a more straight up hardcore, just like kind of more straight ahead power violence than the more experimental stuff they were doing before. So even though I think this is a great album, I think it was not a step in a better direction from their previous album, and I do think it was kind of a document of a band trying to really assert themselves in a pretty dominant scene. So I do give them credit for that. But yeah, so my pick is Code Orange, I Am King. Show a record by an artist, if you can, who you would assign to hell forever for musical crimes against humanity. Oh, who am I condemning to hell? Well, I'm going to pull out an album here. You know what? I'm just going to come right out and say it. It's Weezer. I'm sorry. I know some people in this community really like them. And I got to say, this is Pinkerton. It's even the Mo-Fi. I really love this album. I think Pinkerton is a fantastic album. And also, I think their debut album, the Blue Album, is a really good album. Weezer released 2 really great albums in the 90s, and I take no issue with those 2 albums. I think they're great. I understand why people love them, and I actually really like Pinkerton, although I know a lot of Weezer fans do not like this album. However, we have 2 great albums from the 90s, and then we have a band that has released like 10 absolute steaming piles of shit in the follow-up years. I mean, I remember when Beverly Hills came out, that was some of the worst tripe I've ever heard in my life. I just cannot believe people still allow this band to come out with album after album and still buy this band's show tickets, and they're still selling out stadiums, even though they haven't written a good song in like 20 years. They haven't made an album worth buying in like 20 years. I do not understand how people still tolerate this band. I just don't get it. I cannot listen to anything they've released after this album. It just sounds completely contrived and flat and boring and musically completely uninteresting. It's like college bro butt rock at this point, and I don't get it. I don't get why they have remained a musical force. I don't get why people are still paying them money. I don't understand. Someone help me understand. But you know what? I'm God. I don't have to understand. Weezer, you are banished for eternity. Weezer is gone. No more Weezer. We can all sleep soundly tonight knowing that this musical menace is off our streets and off our airwaves. So now that I sent someone to hell, I have to show my benevolence. And in my benevolence, in your benevolence, number 9, this is question 9. Which VC channel would you bestow 1 million subscribers to, so they may never have to work again and indulge us all with their videos ad infinitum? Well, so the channel I am going to pick is probably a channel that I don't think we want this guy to stop doing his day job, because his day job is far more important than anything any of us do. And, but I do think the channel that does not get the admiration it deserves is Baraka P-Dub, Paul. His channel, he's been making videos for a long time. He's been making really well-crafted, thoughtful videos for a long time with excellent production value. He was kind of the person that I watched that made me want to start making videos. And he was one of the people, the first people in the VC that started talking about, you know, audiophile pressings and sound quality. He talked about stereo gear. This was long before anyone was doing that. This was back when just people were just showing records. So I think he deserves a lot of credit that he doesn't really claim. And you know, his editing skills and some of the production values that go into his videos, I'm constantly amazed by. And you know, I think the one reason why he doesn't have more subscribers than he does is he just doesn't upload all that frequently, which is something I'm definitely guilty of. So I think he would be huge if he uploaded more. So, but he has an important day job. Instead of him having to make more videos and quit his day job, I just want to bestow 1 million subscribers onto Baraka P-Dub's channel, because I think he deserves it. So I think playing God today has tired me out. I think I'm completely done with Godding today. So that's all for now. Until next time, please give me a like and a subscription if you are not already a subscriber to my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. I think we just hit 10,000 subs today, so I probably will make a contest video in the next week or so. So look forward to that, and until next time, cheers VC.